Welcome to No Worries Biology. My name is Anja Doyle, and today I would like to talk about the structure of DNA. I'm assuming that you've already learned about the structure of DNA and that you use this video as kind of a summarizing review. Okay, so here we go. Here you can see a three-dimensional model of the DNA. It's actually just a very short fragment, because as a whole the DNA is an incredibly long molecule. But even within this small fragment of the DNA, you can see that it consists of a lot of different atoms and molecules. And this is why we call the DNA a macromolecule. It is important to note that the DNA is a very, very long thread, so to say. So there's nothing branching off to the side, if you want to say so. It's just this one very, very long thread. And this is what we mean when we say the DNA is branchless. As you can see, this thread is wound up, which is why we call it a helix. But it's actually not just one thread, but two that are wound around each other. Thread number 1 and thread number 2. And this is why we call the DNA a double helix. These two strands run in opposite directions. We will talk about what that actually means in a minute or so, but maybe you remembered the terms 5' and 3' from your biology lessons. So to look at it very generally here, saying that the strands of the DNA run in opposite directions means that one of the threads has the 5' up here and the 3' down here, for instance, and then the other strand has to have the 3' up here and the 5' down here. The center of this double helix structure of the DNA is by no means empty. Instead, there are bases in there. In the DNA, we have 4 bases, and they only come in very specific pairs, which is why we call them complementary bases. It is absolutely crucial to understand the nature and function of these bases, because this is what the DNA is all about. So let's have an even closer look at the structure of DNA. Here we can see the chemical composition of DNA. Just to give you a quick overview, we have of course our 2 backbone strands consisting of sugar molecules and phosphate groups. And here in the middle we have the bases, and those bases are adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. These bases always pair up in very specific ways. Adenine always goes with thymine, and guanine always goes with cytosine. And when you have a closer look at them, you see that some of them contain 1 ring structure in their molecular setup, whilst others contain 2 ring structures in their molecular setup. Adenine and guanine contain 2 rings, while thymine and cytosine contain 1 ring. And this is because thymine and cytosine are pyrimidine bases, while adenine and guanine are purine bases. So, pyrimidine bases contain 1 ring in their molecular structure, while purine bases contain 2 rings in their molecular structure. And maybe you've already realized that 1 pyrimidine base always pairs up with 1 purine base, meaning that there's always a base with 2 ring structure pairing up with a base with a 1 ring structure. And that leads to the fact that there's always the sum of 3 ring structures paired up between the 2 backbones of the DNA. And this ensures that the diameter of the DNA always stays the same, which makes the DNA a whole lot more stable. Now, looking at how these bases actually pair up, it is important to remember that adenine and thymine always connect via 2 hydrogen bonds, whereas guanine and cytosine always connect via 3 hydrogen bonds. For now, we've talked enough about the bases, I would say. So before we go on, let me just quickly remove myself here so that we have room for more notes. There we go. Let's have a look at the other molecules that can be found in DNA. And of course, there's the sugar, namely deoxyribose. Deoxyribose is a pentose sugar, which means that it contains 5 carbon atoms. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Deoxyribose, the name, means that it has one oxygen less than regular ribose. And this oxygen is missing at the second carbon atom, right here. Now that we understand the name deoxyribose, it is important that we understand the significance of the numbers of the carbon atoms as well. Once again, 1 is here, and carbon atom number 5 is here. Those numbers of the carbon atoms are actually the cause of the names of the directions of those two strands of the DNA. So we are now coming back to the 3' and 5'. That is due to the way carbon is used in the molecular structure of DNA. Carbon atom number 1 always connects to the base. Carbon atoms number 3 and 5 always connect to phosphate groups. So let's have a look at that in the overall structure of the DNA right here. This one is carbon atom number 1, and it connects to the base. And this one is carbon atom number 3, and it is connected to a phosphate group. And this one is carbon atom number 5, and it is connected to yet another phosphate group. At the opposite strand of the DNA, we have the same setup, just exactly the other way around. Here is the first carbon atom connected to the base. Here is number 3, connected to a phosphate group, and here is number 5, connected to another phosphate group. We describe the directions of the strands of the DNA according to the carbon atom of the respective sugar molecule being closest to the end of the strand. So here you can see carbon atom number 3 pointing outwards, so it's the 3'. Here you can see carbon atom number 5 pointing outwards, this is the 5'. Same here, carbon atom number 3, 3', carbon atom number 5, 5'. Sounds confusing, but it really isn't that hard. And as the only components of DNA we haven't discussed yet, there are of course the phosphate groups. And what's particularly important about the phosphate groups is that they have a negative charge. And with this, they influence the overall charge of the DNA, which is negative. Now that we've talked so much about the molecular structure of DNA, we're actually very well set up to understand what the name DNA, this abbreviation, actually means. DNA stands for deoxyribonucleic acid. Let's have a closer look at that. Deoxyribo refers to the sugar that can be found in the DNA, deoxyribose. Nucleic means that the DNA can be found in the nucleus. And acid refers to a general chemical property of the DNA, to be acidic. That's it for now. I hope that this video may have helped you to understand what the components of the DNA are, how they are arranged within the DNA, and what the main characteristics of the DNA are. Make sure to check out all the other materials on www.noworriesbiology.com as well. See you soon.